St. Louis, there's a cemetery number one, more specifically in New Orleans. That's what we'll be covering today for June. So first we'll be going over the history of it, which it was originally put together in 1789, so it's a little bit old. And the reason why they did it, so there was a little cemetery before this one in the area, but in the last couple years, before 1789, so around like 1787, mainly I think in 1788, there were a lot of different tragedies around the area. Yellow fever was breaking out, which alone would take a lot of victims. There were floods. There were fires. There were a lot of casualties, and they needed somewhere to put all of them. As sad as that is to say, they were being stacked in the morgues and the hospitals were overwhelmed. They needed a bigger cemetery fast, because the one that was in the area wasn't big enough to hold everyone that they had to bury. Now, this one is just cemetery number one that we're talking about, and you may be wondering why it's called number one, because there are more cemeteries around with different numbers. I want to say there's 3 altogether. Hang on. I want to say there's 3. Yep, there's 3. Maybe one day I'll be talking about those 2, but this one we're focusing on number 1. And since then, I don't think that little cemetery that they had before number 1 is still around. What they did with everyone there, I hope they moved them. Maybe that's why New Orleans is so haunted. Let's just go with they moved them into either number 1, 2, or 3. That just sounds better than imagining houses and buildings on top of an old cemetery. Let's go with that. Now, at first, with the cemetery, there wasn't really anything protecting it so much. There wasn't like a big iron gate. It was just a piece of land that they created as a cemetery. And there was a lot of vandalism done throughout the years, so they since then have better protected it. There's a big gate up there now, as most of them do have. You can't go in there without a tour guide. And you may be asking yourself, what about the people that want to visit loved ones? Because, yeah, it is still being used as a cemetery. It's not just everyone that's from 1700s. You can also visit Nicolas Cage there. Well, not yet. I'm not breaking any news to you. He's still around. But he reserved a tomb for himself there. So when that day does happen, you can visit him there. And that brings up my question. Well, what if you just want to visit someone? What if you want to visit a long-lost relative, a great someone? Do you have to go on a tour? Do you have to just pass by them and see the rest of it every time you want to visit? You can't just stop and visit anyone? You can. So there is a number that you can call. You can get a pass for yourself. I mean, I'm sure you have to give them some information. You can't just go up and be like, hey, I know someone here, because then, everyone would do it. So there are exceptions. And there is someone besides Nicolas Cage, will be Nicolas Cage in that cemetery. Marie Laveau, also known as the Voodoo Queen, is also there. She passed away June 15th, 1881, and since then her tomb is a very popular stop on the tour. This is it in recent years, but before that, You can see little X's on it. They tried to cover it up because this is what it looked like before. But the X's signify wishes. People are asking her for a wish in hopes that it will be granted. And I heard if they come back to it and it's circled, that means it will or it has been. I couldn't find all the specific details on that. But that's why there's X's on her tomb. And people leave little gifts for her. So in life, she was a healer. She learned what people called voodoo from her ancestors, from her mother, from her grandmother. And through life, she was just helping people any way she could. So I would say she is probably the main reason why people love to go to cemetery number 1. So the main reason why I think this ended up in the calendar for June is, it's a cemetery, but what makes it so haunted are things that people catch when they bring their cameras, either just take pictures or record things. If they record things, they catch some voices, and pictures and recordings can catch shadow people along the way as they're going on tour. So it is haunted. That's what most cemeteries are, right? But also, I think this one reserved a spot on the calendar because of how old it is, because it was established in 1789, probably the reason why it had to be established in the first place, and the Voodoo Queen, Marie Laveau, is also there. So I hope you enjoyed this video for June. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay strange, stay spooky. Bye.